Hi guys. Let it go. Right. I wrote all this stuff down. I wrote my own script, and then I thought, no, I'm not gonna follow the script exactly. No. What I'm gonna do is I remember once hearing someone say the rules are only a suggestion, a strong suggestion. So my script is my strong suggestion. And after writing it, as I was writing it actually, I came up with all these changes to the video. So I was gonna have like a very short monologue talking about colors, bright colors, joyous colors, because I was gonna be wearing just the black. Whoa. And guess it can't be children's content now. It can, no one saw anything. Anyways, yeah, I was gonna have this whole thing about joyous colors. Me and jolly colors, we are on speaking terms. I often can be heard speaking about them. I just don't feel the need to wear them around me like a pelt as you do your friends. And when I said it out loud, it just came out completely different than how I had written it. So I decided to leave it out and wear jolly colors, and now just figured out a way to do both at the same time. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I've been really pulling my punches with this channel because I didn't want to offend anyone, and I have all these close friends that are extremely religious. And you know what I just realized? All I've been doing, that's also self-sabotaging, because I did that video on self-sabotaging, and I just realized I was doing it the entire time. I'm saying I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that, I'm going to talk about the other thing, and then I proceed to talk about nothing else but the freedom to talk. So what am I doing with my freedom to talk? Nothing. I should be using it, so I'm gonna use it. So let's do like our friend Infinite Waters. He's pretty awesome. Actually, him and my mom used to talk. Really cool guy. And so I was signing up with all these different Facebook sites specifically for different types of spirituality. And they ask you some questions. Who are your favorite or most beloved deities? Exactly what type of practices do you practice yourself? I shouldn't do that. It looks like, oh, what kind of things do you actually do? And I was like, well, I do this, I do that, I make wishes, blah, blah, blah. And they asked me who's my favorite deity. And I got so lost in thought about the idea of the simplicity and yet the gravitas behind answering that question that I realized an hour had gone by. And I was, Jesus, I'm doing the same thing with this that I do with my videos. I gotta figure out a way to stop saying Jesus too. But anyway, so here's the thing. I realized there's just so many. And there's the ones that I remember now. It's harder to remember stuff when you're depressed. It's like there's all this water. If you're wearing a turtleneck, the neck of your shirt is coming up here, but the water's just here. So trying to remember what any one thing feels like at the same time is so difficult. It's like being in so many different places all at once. It's very disorienting. And I was like, so who are my favorite deities? Well, here's what I remember. I remember Hecate, kind of the lady of the moon. Usually she's both the harbinger of good news and what others would see as bad news. She tells you about pregnancies. She also tells you about deaths. She's about life. She's about understanding and looking, scrying, looking into the future, searching for answers. She can typically be seen in different forms, different time periods, and different cultures with different animals. Sometimes it's a snake, sometimes it's two very large dogs. That was closer to the time when the church started coming around and started turning her into an almost hellish figure. But the whole point was that she was both the maid, the woman, and the crone. And at each point in your life, the idea is that there's different large life lessons that you learn. And there's all the smaller life lessons, or there's the more complexities beneath it. And at each point, your point to being slightly changes. And she has three faces, the same way that the moon has 3 major faces. So to my way of thinking, the moon really has more like 4, but didn't count that. So anyways, she correlates directly to the moon, and she usually comes to people on a full moon. She usually talks to the astral plane. So there's a lot, so much more about Hecate, and including different people like to pronounce her names different ways. I've heard people say Hecate, I've seen people say Hecate. I've seen other people say Hecate. It all depends. And she's, for me, a very Celtic figure, a very Norse figure, but for a lot of people, she's a very Roman figure, a very Greek figure, or even a very I'm so tired. I'm like carcinogen, bleh, bleh, bleh. Never mind that. The point is, even in Mesopotamia, she is everywhere. And the truth is, you can follow her name and you can follow her description and different sightings throughout different countries, and you can actually look at a trail, and it's led a lot of different people to believe that maybe she was a real person who had different certain talents that people took way over the edge when doing these oral traditions of sharing these stories about this woman, and to the point that they've wondered if maybe she was a real life figure, like well, you ready? Here we go. This is one of my most favorite of deities, this lady, like Quan. So some different scientists, some different doctors, some different, however you want to term it, different people from all over the place with all sorts of doctorates, wonder if Danu, Dionysus, Diana, Hecate, uh, Artemis, Athena, and one other, well, the Tuatha De Danann, that was of Danu. Oh, basically, they wonder if all these women are actually one woman who was traveling, and that's why she may have taken on a different appearance in all these different stories, because in the telling, in the tradition of storytelling, everyone has a license to embellish just a little bit, and what if they embellished a whole hell of a lot? And so the Greeks are as having this colored hair, and people in other places are as having other colored hair. Now here's the difference between, say, Hecate versus Quan Yin, or versus the Mother Mary, or, and this is my hypothesis, what will happen with Mother Theresa one day. The understanding and the sightings and the details became very scattered as time went on, and as time went on, the same culture's perception of that lady, that woman, whoever she was, changed so drastically that suddenly she was typically of this one age, suddenly she always had this colored hair, and that leads a lot of us to believe that she was probably a different person, maybe the premier student of that person, maybe the daughter of that person, maybe a half daughter of that person, as in, maybe, it could have been anything. Not a half daughter, it doesn't make any sense. You can be a half sister, half brother, you can't be a half daughter. Never mind, I'm tired. Calm down. Here's the point. What if the biggest difference between those people versus people like these, I don't know if you can see her really well behind my shirt, look. Oh, what if the difference, what if the difference was simply that other religions got involved and pushed out the original religion and threatened these people's way of life and their very life, to the point where they had no choice. They had to destroy all of their relics, they had to destroy all of their artwork, and after time goes on, just like how for a long time Gaelic was something that most people weren't allowed to speak and was a dying language, and now it's coming back. Same thing with Irish, same thing with a lot of other languages. What if the same way that those different loves and beliefs and religious artifacts being forced down into this sort of underground railroad is really what derailed, so to speak, the belief and general understanding of that person? That didn't happen in this religion. Not to the point that it did in all of those other religions. Buddhism was not as threatened or successfully destroyed or successfully as put on pause, shall we say, as many of the different Western pagan religions. And so this is one of my favorite people in history, and it is also one of my favorite deities. This is Quan Yin. And there's a lot of different ways to see Quan Yin in traditional Japanese mythology or traditional Japanese Buddhism. Quan Yin is sitting on a lily pad. Oh no, she's sitting on a lotus floating over a lily pad on a giant bed of clouds that are being pulled and encircled by two large, very thin dragons. They're making like this, what's it called, like a eternity knot, and then the dragons are facing down like this, just beneath her, and she's floating like that. But then the thing is, she's not described like that anywhere else, only there. And I think that's really interesting, and I think that's a little bit of proof to something that we all already know. I don't recall ever reading that she visited Japan at any point, but for the places that we know for a fact that she was in, those more embellished, awesome details are missing, and instead, details of her tremendous good deeds are just perfectly preserved. You can read about her anywhere. So, do you consider this to be a relic? Or do you consider this to be an idol? Do you worship this, or do you worship the lady that it is personifying in its decoration and its carving? Well, personally, I see this as a really beautiful piece of art that's there to remind me that this person existed, that a person whose love and kindness touched so many people existed. This reminds me that once upon a time there was someone on this earth whose love and patience and compassion for people was so epic that it was literally an epic. And did she ascend? I think so. Why not? Why wouldn't I believe that she ascended? I completely believe she ascended, which would mean that to some degree she exists, but to a greater degree she no longer does. And that's okay. None of us are trying to get to a point where we're around forever and ever and ever, amen. We're trying to get to a point where we get to our better selves. And that's the thing that I find really confusing and interesting about Christianity, because so many of them will tell you, first of all, that they're not perfect. There's no way they could possibly be perfect. They're never going to be perfect. Don't believe anyone who says they are perfect. And to always show compassion, to try and be the same, although you can never ever reach anything anywhere near to the degree of kindness or love or self-sacrifice that Jesus showed. Always try to follow his example, is what they're always saying. And then they're always usually also saying not to trust people, but then they're also always saying to try and be kind and try to be loving, and that not trusting or not accepting gifts is the same thing as being full of yourself. What a paradox. Why trust or accept a gift from someone that you can never trust? Someone who can never be good enough, admittedly, as yourself. How interesting.